Our reading this morning is from Luke chapter 24. Now on the same day, two of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem, and talking with each other about these things that had happened. While they were talking and discussing, Jesus himself came near and went with them, but their eyes were kept from recognizing him. And he said to them, "What are you discussing with each other while you walk along?" They stood still, looking sad. Then one of them, whose name was Cleopas, answered him, "Are you the only stranger in Jerusalem that does not know the things that have taken place here in these days?" He asked them, "What things?" They replied, "The things about Jesus of Nazareth, who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word before God and all the people, and how the chief priests and leaders handed him over to be condemned to death and crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one to redeem Israel. Yes, and besides all this, it is now the third day since these things took place. Moreover, some women of our group astounded us. They were at the tomb early this morning, and when they did not find his body there, they came back and told us that they had indeed seen a vision of angels who said that he was alive. Some of those who were with us went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said, but they did not see him." Then he said to them, "Oh, how foolish you are, and how slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have declared. Was it not necessary that the Messiah should suffer these things and then enter into his glory?" Then, beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he interpreted to them the things about himself in all the scriptures. As they came near the village to which they were going, he walked ahead as if he were going on. But they urged him strongly, saying, "Stay with us, because it is almost evening and the day is now nearly over." So he went in to stay with them. When he was at the table with them, he took bread, blessed it, and broke it, and gave it to them. Then their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he vanished from their sight. They said to each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he was talking to us on the road, while he was opening the scriptures to us?" That same hour, they got up and returned to Jerusalem, and they found the 11 and their companions gathered together. They were saying, "The Lord has risen indeed, and he has appeared to Simon." Then they told what had happened on the road and how he had been made known to them in the breaking of the bread. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to
God. And before I get too far into this, just a quick thing from my childhood. My dad would always sing, "Road again, just can't wait to get on the road again," if we were going to the gas station or if we were going across the country. Every time, without fail. As a kid, I would just roll my eyes. "Dad, stop it." Now I just smile and smirk, but also, I could preach.
I know a lot of you go to see live music, so by show of hands, how many of you have gone to some kind of live music performance of any kind? Yeah, a good majority of you. What do you do while you're there? Clap, cheer, probably take some pictures if it's allowed. Then what? Well, if you're anything like me, you'll post to Facebook or Instagram or text some people those pictures. Now, forgive me if I'm about to call anybody out here, but how many of you did those same things for the resurrection? Yeah, well, don't worry. I'm in the same boat. But now Easter is past, a full week ago. What are we doing? If I'm being honest, I'm breathing a little easier. It's not as crazy here at church as it has been. But we know exactly what happens next in the Jesus story, right? We can plan to preach on it, to teach on it, and even to celebrate it. But the followers of Jesus, they didn't know. At least not a majority of them. I want you to imagine those people. How do you think they were feeling? Were they hurting for their loss or confused about what happens next? No one tells you what to do when the thing you prayed for doesn't happen. When the miracle you believed for never comes. When the story you thought you were living suddenly feel like it's somebody else's. No one prepares you for the silence after hope gets crushed. You just keep walking, keep moving, keep going through the motions. But inside, you're carrying the weight of a dream that died. That's the road we find Cleopas and his friend on. Not a road of celebration, not a road of victory, a road of, what now? Maybe you are, or I am, or we all are on that road too. That's what this next 6-week series is all about. We're calling it The Waiting, a post-resurrection tour. Because after the resurrection, which was the most important moment in Christian history, there was no parade, no sold-out arena. There was just silence, confusion, waiting. The followers of Jesus were stumbling forward with heartbreak, wondering if the story was over. And the truth is, that's still where we live. This period of waiting is where our unfinished song becomes part of his set list. We are the band now. We are the ones carrying the music forward. We are the ones Jesus is still walking with, teaching, revealing, calling, week after week, encounter after encounter. The sound gets louder. The good news gets bigger. And the world starts to hear a song they can't ignore. 2 of Jesus' followers are walking away from Jerusalem, walking away from everything they had hoped for. Jesus' death wasn't just the death of a man. It was the death of their future, their dream, their story. April 2024. College students at Columbia University start pitching tents on the quad, not to riot, not to burn anything, but to protest peacefully. They believed if they showed up with clarity, with nonviolence, they could change something. They had hope. You could almost hear their conversations. If we show up, maybe they'll listen. If we're peaceful, maybe they'll take us seriously. And then the administration called the police, in riot gears, no less. Over 100 students were arrested, tents ripped down, dreams dismantled, hope crushed. You could almost feel the whiplash they must have felt, standing there in shock, thinking, that's not how this was supposed to go. And that's exactly where we meet the disciples on the road in Luke 24, disillusioned, crushed, walking away. They were on the road again, but it sure didn't feel like a comeback tour. Now that same day, 2 of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem. They were talking with each other about everything that had happened. 7 miles of disappointment. 7 miles of confusion. 7 miles of wavering between silence and unanswered questions. Waiting isn't passive. It's carrying those unanswered questions mile after laborious mile. After Columbia, it didn't stop. Instead, the movement spread across 60 campuses nationwide. Tents went up, songs and prayers rose into the cold air. Handmade signs waved in the wind, and yet, more police, more arrests, more silence. Imagine they're laying in a sleeping bag at 2 a.m. under the stars. Your hands are cold, your hope feels even colder, and the questions start to rise. Is anybody even listening? Is this ever going to change anything? Did we waste our hope? The road always feels longer when the questions get heavier. The disciples are there too, walking, wondering, weighted down with silence. And then, along the road, someone shows up. Jesus comes alongside them, just quietly walks with them, but they don't recognize him. Grief can blur your vision like that. At the encampments, when the students were beginning to feel isolated, when the news headlines twisted their story and their parents were calling them home, something unexpected happened. Faculty started stepping forward. At Columbia alone, over 400 professors signed an open letter supporting the students, advocating for their voices, risking their own reputations to say, "We see them, we hear them, we stand with them." Can you imagine how that must have felt to realize you weren't alone as you thought you were? And maybe you weren't abandoned. Maybe somebody had been quietly walking beside you all along. The disciples got there too. Hope was closer than they knew, and it's closer to you than you know right now. At the end of the road, they sit down together. The stranger, still unrecognized, takes bread and blesses it and breaks it. And in that moment, their eyes are opened. Not through a miracle, not through fireworks, through something as simple as bread being broken. At the protests, transformation didn't happen through big speeches or big miracles either. It happened around simple meals. Rice and beans scooped onto paper plates, sandwiches passed around by tired hands, prayers whispered over steaming coffee under tattered tents. Students shared meals with people they barely knew, people from different races, different religions, different backgrounds. And around that shared bread, that shared meal, they didn't just protest together. They became a family. Hope didn't come storming onto the quad. Hope crept in on the aroma of cheap food shared between weary friends. That's still how Jesus often shows up, not in the spectacular, but in the small. The moment their eyes are open, the disciples, they don't stay seated. They run back to the mess, back to the mission. Because when you realize that hope is alive, you can't stay still. You have to move. You have to sing the next verse. And the students, they didn't stay still either. Even after the police raids and the tents were torn down, even after the movement wasn't in headlines anymore, they kept going. Some students started new justice initiatives. Some changed their majors, their career paths, their whole lives. And still others started mentoring the next wave of young activists. They did not stay silent. They carried the song forward. The story of Columbia students, and then some, is more than just what they were protesting about. Whether you come down on the side of the Palestinians or on Israel, that's a whole other discussion. Here at home, as citizens in the United States of America, this is a story about our right to free speech, which is becoming ever more precious. What about our rights as citizens in God's kingdom? Rights? I really felt icky saying that word, and I hope you felt just as icky hearing it. God gave us free will to do with as we so choose. And we chose. When we committed to Jesus, whether by baptism or sprinkling or confirmation or whatever method, we chose to sing praises to God, to love like Jesus, to every person without judgment, without prejudice, and especially without exceptions. We don't live in a Christian vacuum. We don't even live in a Christian theocratic nation, which honestly I'm glad for. Because faith that's forced is not faith at all. Faith has to be chosen. It has to be lived freely, breathed deeply, or it's just a shell. Here's the tension. Even though we live in a secular world, our faith isn't something that we can package up nicely in a box and leave on a shelf at home. Our lives as Christians and our lives as citizens are intertwined. Sometimes they clash, sometimes they pull against each other. Sometimes, I'd venture to say most of the time, they leave us standing in the messy middle, trying to figure out what faithfulness looks like. The truth is, even among Christians, we don't always agree on what's right and what's wrong. We don't always agree on what justice looks like. I mean, we don't even always agree on how to love our neighbor well. So it's complicated and messy. Here's what we know for sure. Jesus showed up. Jesus showed up for the ones who were pushed out and left behind, for the ones who no one else wants to listen to, for the ones whose voices were being silenced. He didn't just show up when it was easy. He showed up when it cost him everything. And even after he rose from the dead, even after the world tried to end his story, he kept showing up. He kept showing up for the hurting, the doubting, and the waiting. Pope Francis recently passed away. The stories I have been continuously hearing about him and his life are all about how he showed up for people. He showed up for Islamic refugees. He showed up for the LGBTQ plus community by saying we should not condemn them, a big move for the Catholic Church. For welcoming those who are divorced, for people living in slums, for immigrants on our own shores. I strongly encourage you to go read those stories. They're pretty incredible. But I don't bring up the Pope because I think he is equal to Jesus. I bring him up because he showed up and loved exactly like Jesus. When people met the Pope, they said that they could see the empathy in his eyes. They could hear the kindness in his words. He thoroughly chose Jesus. And we did too. We chose Jesus, which means that we also have to show up. Not just for people it's easy to love, not just when it's safe or comfortable, but for the students protesting and the faculty adding their support, or for the unhoused, for the immigrant, for the lonely, for the ones whose stories aren't being heard, for the whatever group it is. Friends, I want to make this very clear. This is not a political agenda. This is a resurrection agenda. This is what it means to live like Jesus in a world that's still waiting for hope. In this political climate, it's not easy. Showing up is hard, and honestly, most of the time I feel anxious. I feel overwhelmed and stuck even. Like I'm standing at a crosswalk, waiting for the light to change, and it just never does. I keep thinking, maybe tomorrow I'll know what to do. Maybe next week I'll feel brave enough. Maybe you feel that way too? Maybe you're waiting for a sign, waiting for a safer time, and waiting for the fear to go away. But here's the thing. Faith isn't waiting for the fear to leave. Faith is walking while you're still afraid. Hope isn't pretending everything is okay. Hope is carrying your questions down the road anyway. And courage, real courage, isn't a feeling you get once you have all the answers. Courage is showing up in the waiting, believing that even when you can't see it yet, God is already writing resurrection into the story. You don't have to wait until you feel ready, until you feel strong, or until the road is clear. You just have to keep walking. Because the middle The middle is holy too. And Jesus is already there. Friends, that story, the story of Jesus showing up again and again, it's not finished. It's still happening. It's unfolding right before us, right here, right now, in you and in me. So, this is also not just a story about students protesting on a campus, or about two people walking on a dusty road outside of Jerusalem. It's about all of us. We are still waiting. We are still wondering if God even sees us. The temptation is to sit down and give up or to stay silent. But Jesus is still walking that road, still meeting us in the waiting, still breaking bread at tables we thought were empty. How many times have you been left waiting for test results that could alter how you live your life, for the grief to pass after the loss of a loved one, for the next step after you lost your job, for when something happens that you had no control over? One of my favorite, and what I think is one of the most poignant quotes by Captain Picard in Star Trek Next Generation is, "It is possible to commit no mistakes and still lose. That is not a weakness. That is life." Life happens, and it just sucks sometimes. But that's why, if you're still waiting, keep walking. If you're still hurting, stay open to the stranger on the road. If you're still breaking bread in small, ordinary ways, pay attention. You might just see the face of God. And when your eyes are opened, don't keep it to yourself. Tell your story. Help someone else who's stuck in the waiting. Carry the music forward. Sing the next verse, even if your voice is trembling. Because you are on the road again as part of the band. The set list isn't done. There's still a song of resurrection left to be played. Will you pray with me? Holy God, thank you for meeting us on the road even when we're tired and hurting and don't recognize you right away. Thank you for the bread you break with us, the quiet ways you open our eyes and steady our hearts. Teach us to keep walking, to stay open, to trust the music you're still writing into our lives. Make us brave enough to carry your hope and faithful enough to sing your song, especially when the waiting feels long. We believe you're not done. We believe the resurrection is still unfolding, and we are ready to play our part in the song you are singing. So in Christ's resurrected name we pray. Amen.